Ancient humanity, also known as Archaeohomina, are a subset of humanity who were likely first seeded by the precursors some 15 million years ago, from the same base stock that also produced the forerunners. Ancient humanity would then rapidly advance, expanding a fledgling interstellar empire outward along the galactic arm towards the rim of the Milky Way galaxy. Their empire grew and blossomed and brought in other species into the human empire and continued relatively unchallenged and uninterrupted for millions of years. That is until the flood arrived in the galaxy and humanity began fleeing and selectively culling planets that were shown to be harbouring a flood infection, and some of these planets just so happened to be forerunner planets. It was this interaction, or rather the misinterpretation of this interaction, that led to the human forerunner war that eventually resulted in the devolution of humanity from a thriving interstellar empire to hunter-gatherers once again stranded upon their homeworld. All that remained of that glorious ancient civilization was destroyed, forcing humanity to redevelop over the following 100,000 years to once again become an interstellar civilization, but nowhere close to the technical sophistication that they once were so many millions of years before. This modern humanity was aided in no small part by their ingenuity in reverse engineering technology from their mortal enemies, the Covenant, and the discovery of their status as reclaimers, inheritors of all the forerunners left behind following their self-imposed exile. But even with these technological gifts, humanity were still a shadow of their former selves, as we had no instances of ancient human technology that we could research, investigate, and reverse engineer to leapfrog ourselves forward, technologically speaking, to the level of our ancient ancestors. At least that was the case until the discovery of Site Yankee 002 G3, a derelict ancient human starship, and what was discovered inside is completely uprooting anything we thought we knew about our ancient past. Hey everyone, welcome back to Installation 00, and today we're taking a look at one of the very few examples of ancient human technology that still exists in the Milky Way galaxy that modern humanity, or rather the Office of Naval Intelligence, have discovered. Site Yankee 002 G3, the discovery site of an ancient, derelict human vessel. This ship, remarkably intact, offers a rare glimpse into humanity's advanced civilization that existed over 100,000 years ago, contemporaneous with the Forerunners. The Xenomaterials Exploitation Group conducted their initial examination of the vessel, producing Report 15Y1198. This report read as follows. Executive Summary. Reconstructed from artifact located at Site Yankee 002 G3. The discovered vessel does not conform to any known alien design. Damage patterns on the original hull were consistent with Tier 1 high-energy and tractor-pressor weapons, but there is no evidence of flood supercell infiltration or signature cryptostructures, which are common elements of Zeta debitage. Our assessment is that the vessel is Archaeohomina in origin, and further analysis should be immediately assigned to Project Arcdream. Tactical assessment. Full simulation of tactical capabilities is ongoing, but initial simulation of primary weapon systems indicate that offensive mechanisms are a high probability match for weapons translated as fibril cutters in Forerunner records. Further investigation of this line of information has been assigned to the team on Azure Moon. Other weapons appear to be a variation of particle beam accelerators, though the science team believes this to be superficially homologous. Following this cursory assessment, ONI teams boarded the vessel and began exploring its interior. but given the vessel that has come to be designated as a cruiser is over 6 kilometers in length, larger than the UNSC Infinity, a supercarrier no less, at only 5.6 kilometers, it stands to reason that the ONI team have only explored a very, very small section of the ship. And more worryingly, the ship seems to exude a psychological effect on the researchers the longer they are aboard the vessel. Prolonged exposure to the ship led to unsettling psychological effects including hallucinations, identity confusion, and the manifestation of a tulpa, a thought form entity. These incidents suggest the ship possesses residual consciousnesses or psionic influence, affecting those who interact with it. Some seem to be in a half-awake, sleepwalking, daydreaming kind of state, muttering incoherent sentences under their breath. Some have auditory and visual hallucinations, with some reporting that they can hear a hum and are trying to find its source, and others staring at walls because they can see things moving in them. And more unsettlingly, some are recalling memories that aren't even theirs, but in fact memories of other ONI crew members on board. The most substantial account comes from an unnamed ONI researcher, whom we will call the Dreamer, who remained behind after a mission shift ended and formed a parasymbiotic mental bond with an unidentified woman, an ancient figure whose consciousness persists as a tulpa. Tulpamancy is a practice that involves using focused effort and meditation techniques to create and cultivate a tulpa, which is a thought form or imaginary companion that practitioners consider sentient and relatively independent. It's essentially the act of deliberately creating a new personality within one's own mind, a concept not unlike the gene songs or gesh that the librarian implanted into humanity, allowing ancient human consciousnesses to co-inhabit a more modern human and be expressed and brought forward at specific times and under specific preordained conditions. The difference herein, however, is that the tulpa encountered by the ONI researcher doesn't appear to be a gene song implanted within the individual, but rather the ship itself contains a consciousness imprint of the entity, and that it is seemingly being projected into the mind of this individual as if the ship itself has a will of its own. However, this is not specifically confirmed, and thus it could just be that this particular individual does in fact carry a gene song of an ancient human that only became active upon encountering an ancient human ship. However, a point that seems to disprove this is that the events that the individual is being guided through by the tulpa entity do in fact seem to have taken place on this particular vessel, rather than being brought forward due to its proximity to an ancient human ship, making it astronomically unlikely that an individual just so happens to be carrying the exact gesh of an ancient human who just so happened to perish on this exact ship, and that the two would ever even cross paths for that gesh to manifest. Astronomically unlikely, but not impossible. In either case, this individual, whom we will call the Dreamer, utilised a device from Project Enoch derived from an archaic ancient human armour, allowing him to speak in an ancient language he somehow understands, almost like an extremely invasive translation device. The Dreamer hides aboard the ship as the rest of his team rotates out, desiring to be alone with this individual. He describes the presence as a mind interwoven with his own, like a half-remembered dream. Guided by her, he finds himself at a sealed bulkhead, and using the Enoch device and her whispered instructions, he activates the door via ancient psionic or energy-based mechanisms. Entering a previously sealed chamber, he experiences a vivid vision, either shared memory or simulation. A humanoid woman, ancient and powerful, is imprisoned within a containment field, surrounded by forerunners in angular, fused armour, who accuse humanity of violating the mantle of responsibility. She rebukes them, warning of a parasitic force she calls the Shaping Sickness, what we would call the Flood. The foreigners suspect the plague to be a human bioweapon and ignore her pleas, and she warns them that they will fall just as humanity did. The strain of channeling this consciousness and these shared memories takes an extreme physical toll on the dreamer, and he collapses in exhaustion, realizing she is no hallucination, but a real person whose mind lives on inside of him. Among other researchers, he alone has made contact with a tulpa this coherent. He tries to recuperate but is urged onward by her, deeper into the ship, towards the bridge. Another vision manifests as the ship trembles and the corridor behind him transforms into organic matter, flesh, tendrils, pustules, an encroaching flood infestation. The ancient woman and a Forerunner warrior flee together through the corridor, the Forerunner firing integrated weaponry in their prefect armour, and the woman warrior wielding more of a conventional gun. She is described as tall, broad, and morphologically distinct from modern humans, more Denisovan than Homo sapiens. The dreamer climbs a ladder towards the ship's command station. Weakened and drained, he struggles but is driven by a need for understanding. He speaks through his mouth, stating, "We have come this far, let there be no secrets between us." He receives a series of symbolic visions. A wave crashing over cities, a metaphor for the flood. Peace accords between disparate species. A sphinx, an ancient riddle figure, transforming into a mechanical hybrid, a symbol of deception or corrupted legacy. The implication being that her people used themselves as bait to show the foreigners the truth of the flood in the hopes of forcing a response. The dreamer finally reaches an antechamber near the bridge, and another vision begins to play. A Forerunner soldier pinned under debris tries in vain to fight off the flood with a spent weapon. The infected, twisted commander of the Forerunner crew appears, adorned with crown-like tendrils. It kneels before the trapped soldier and does something unspeakable, a moment so horrible the dreamer cannot recall or describe it. At this most eerie of moments, the Forerunner seemingly sees the dreamer just before their death, perhaps in confusion, perhaps with recognition, implying that perhaps the dreamer seeing these events replayed is also simultaneously a form of astral projection through time, in that they actually are manifesting there in that moment. But again, this is not explicitly stated, but most definitely speaks to the living time trope that the Foreigners and ancient humanity both subscribe to. Speaking of which, if you're enjoying this content, be sure to hit that subscribe button. After this vision subsides, the tulpa withdraws from his mind. The dreamer notes her departure, not as death, but as a return to the deep unconscious. It would appear her time guiding him is now past. She has shown what must be seen, and what remains now is his role in making it real. He feels abandoned, yet honoured, understanding that her presence within him was never just illusion, it was memory made manifest. Despite exhaustion, he reaches the ship's command centre, a vast chamber filled with dormant consoles and a long central operations table. At her subtle urging, he speaks ancient activation tones using the Project Enoch vocal modulator. At first, nothing happens, and then a faint hum builds and the bridge awakens. Light stutters and then coalesces into data projections, first chaotic, then structured. A holographic star map activates, first showing the local system, also showing the nearby Anlace-class frigate in orbit, then panning outward to encompass vast regions of space. He experiences both her awe and his own, an emotional crescendo as the view expands to the outer galaxy and beyond. He sees the truth. Humanity, though devastated by the Foreigners, was not wholly destroyed. Their civilization had expanded deep into uncharted space, reaching beyond the Perseus arm towards the edges of the galaxy into regions the Forerunners feared to enter. These were pockets of survival, settlements or outposts untouched by the Forerunner purge. The dreamer realizes that the Forerunners' absence in those regions was not simply oversight, it was fear. Some ancient dread, encoded even in their genetic memory, kept them from venturing too far. The ancient humans had escaped, perhaps deliberately, knowing that seeding life at the galaxy's edges might be the only hope for a future return. The dreamer comes to understand his place in a vast continuum, a single node in a long chain of memory and legacy. Humanity today carries fragments of the ancestors, their language, their thoughts, their potential. These remnants are waiting to be recovered, reawakened, and brought to the surface, much like the Tulpa was. The dreamer accepts that his lifespan may be too short to see the full fruits of this knowledge. But he is not disheartened. There is a spark in humanity that survives extinction and exile. One day, others will reach the same shores, and when they do, the ancient mantra, the song of the broken wheel, will be sung again. Dawa Mathu, an ancient phrase whose meaning is not translated, but deeply emotional, and tied to ancient humanity's beliefs on the ebb and flow of life. From this recollection alone, we find some startling realizations for upcoming lore within the Halo universe. It was believed that ancient humanity were entirely wiped out by the Forerunners at the close of the Human-Forerunner War. But it has just become abundantly clear that ancient humanity still survives. A small settlement of ancient humanity expanded beyond the rim of the galaxy, beyond the reach of the Forerunners. And they survived the firing of the Halos. The ancestors, Archaeo Homina, ancient humanity, the most advanced manifestation of humanity that has ever existed, that rivaled the Forerunners and managed to fight a war on two fronts simultaneously and hold their own, still exist. And if this lore drop is of any indication on what is to come in the future of the Halo franchise, we can determine one clear, resounding fact: ancient humanity are coming. And based on the technology alone that we see at Site Yankee 002G3, the galaxy are not ready for them. And in truth, neither are we. We can't guarantee that they are going to be arriving as friends. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on what's coming next. Do you believe they're going to come back as friends? Do you believe they're actually going to come back as enemies, being so far removed from current humanity and so immensely ideologically opposed to the way in which humanity operates nowadays that they cannot tolerate our existence? What's going to happen with humanity's technology once it's reverse engineered from this immense ship? And what other secrets lie beyond the rim of the galaxy? Pop your comments down below, and until next time. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, kindly tap that like button, and if you're not already subscribed and want to see more stuff like this, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future uploads. Pop a comment down below telling me what you thought of today's video, or if you want me to cover something specific in the near future. I want to take this opportunity to thank and give shoutouts to my patrons and YouTube supporters: Spartan10148, my singular Contender class Ancilla, the triumvirate of minds within my installations Metarch, Falcon, Jordan and Poseidon, my 7 installation monitors Sophia, Ashley, Esoteric, Spartan1029, Chris, Orion and Shane, the crush of sub-monitors Legion, Ryan, Lebrat, Spartan0137, Element 0, J3, Cult, Evermore's, Personal Devil, Scion Esports, Phantasma, Ashton and 191 Shaken Lightbulb, my fleet of Strato Sentinels, my most loyal of Enforcers, and every single one of the awesome people supporting the channel over on Patreon. My Tier 0 Transcendent YouTube members Spartan137 again, Maury, Jimbo and Balaz and all other YouTube members keeping my installation functional on that glorious vacuum energy. I cannot thank you all enough. Shout out to John because... And if you like what I'm doing here, consider supporting the channel on one of the support links in the description to net yourself some tasty merch and help keep the channel going. Take it easy everyone, and find peace in the domain.